Okay, now we're going to show you the fundamentals, and it's squat, okay? Squat is one of the most important basic movements. You have to know that you're doing it right for it to be beneficial, for it to hit the proper components of your body, but also for it to be safe. And safe is the #1 term here we're going to use, okay? So I will demonstrate a little bit, we'll talk. Kurt's going to make sure I'm doing it right because he's the powerlifting man. Alright? So basically the squat, you have a couple different squats. You can just squat down. A lot of people, this is the way they squat. They'll just squat straight down. They're using a lot of quads, okay? And their knees are going way past their toes. You can see on an angle here that my knees are over my toes completely. They're actually surpassing me, okay? Just putting pressure on my knees, and it's only getting my quads. It's not getting my hamstring very much. It's not getting my glutes very much, okay? And most of the time, the back starts curving at the same time, which is compromising your lower back. That's a no-no. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the proper squat. So there's two variances you can do. Okay, you can just squat straight down. So now I'm using a lot of quads, or you can squat a little bit more backwards. This is the one we like to use the most. At this point here, I'm using less quads, more hamstring, more hip flexors, and more glutes. All right. So who doesn't want to work on their glutes and get their rears a little bit more in shape? Right? So
from a point of power as well, when we're using the squat, when we're making sure his top is back on his heels, as you can see, he can wiggle his toes just about any time he wants. And what's happening here, to do that, he's forcing his backside out, all right? And what's happening is forcing the hip flexors to engage. And the biggest problem with a lot of people is they don't have mobility in their hip flexors. They've lost that. And that's why they tend to squat forward, like he said, way over the knees, way over the toes, and cause a lot of lower back issues, because that lower back's going to get hot. It never gets a break. When we squat properly back onto the heels, we stick our butts back, what we're doing is we're really working on this hip flexor joint here. It needs to engage, and the more it engages, the more it keeps everything stacked properly, and the back is neutral so that it's not being overworked. It's there when it needs to be there, but the focus is all through the hips, the glutes, and the lower abs and stuff. And that's where your power comes from in most of your kettlebell exercises. And from a calorie burning point of view, everyone's trying to maximize calorie burning. The more we use the legs and the hips, that's where we burn the most amount of calories. So if you want to talk about burning calories, weight loss, you have to involve the legs. That's why squats are involved in so many of the routines that we do in one shape or the other, is that so we get that maximum calorie burning. The other thing where a lot of people have problems when they are leaning forward and they're not sure what to do is we'll work on a couple of tips or tricks to show them how to feel and basically teach the body how to engage the hips. And one of the things we'll do is we'll walk up to something like a post here and stand as close as you can with it. Now some guys, if people start with it, we'll have them further back, and as they get more comfortable with it, we'll move them closer so that when they squat, they're forced to drive their hips back, their bum basically hip checks back, their chest stays nice and straight and up, and their back is neutral. You see? So it's being done. This way the body has no choice. Alright, so
we give us a wall. A wall is really good. Put your toes right to the wall, nice wide stance, toes pointing out slightly, put your toes right onto the wall. And you should be able to squat right down, opening up your hips, really forcing you to stay flexible.
Exactly, going onto your heels and putting most of the weight there. The other thing we'll work on is in some of our warm-ups is we'll actually have them come down in their squats where they'll sit down into a hold position as we call it. Now I'm a little stiff, I haven't warmed up, so I'm slightly forward, but what we're doing is we got them on their heels, we'll get the elbows inside, and we teach them to push those hips open a bit more, teach them to settle down. The other thing we can do for balance is put the fingers on the ground so they have a little more counterbalance, or hold onto the kettlebell. Now they can sort of sit back using it as a counterweight. So all of a sudden they start to loosen up, the body starts to loosen up and starts to understand that the hip flexors are getting involved now, and it gets a little calmer. So again, I can move my toes, I can move further back, and I'm not worried about falling back as much overall. And then again, always press out, heels through the floor, and then finish with your pelvic thrust on top.